asad asino sad asit tadanim asid rajono vyoma paroyat kim avarivaha kuhakasya sarmam ambaha kim asid gahanam gabiram na mrityor asid amritam natari naratriya asit praketaha anidavatam swadhayatad ekam tasmadjanyan na paraha kim janasa. This is a prayer taken from the 129th hymn of the 10th section of the Rig Veda. Then even non-existence wasn't there, nor existence. There was no air then, nor other space beyond it. What covered it? Where was it? In whose keeping? Was there then cosmic fluid or water in depths unfathomed? And then there was neither death, nor was there immortality, nor was there then the torch of night and day. The one breathed windlessly and self-sustaining. There was that one then, and there was no other. I selected this introductory prayer as a kind of background to what we studied last week from the Bhagavatam, and of course it was echoed with a story taken from the Matsya Purana, the story of the remarkable sage Markandeya. We have to have a view of what this is all about, this story. So I'm going to analyze a little bit more because of how profound it was. I went through the story very briefly last week, and I thought it would be worthwhile going into it in much more depth. You may realize that the whole thing is to do with the principle of Maya, but then what is Maya? You can't define it. Since as soon as you try to approach it, it kind of just dissolves. It is full of contradictions. There's existence, there's non-existence. We take it for granted that this world, for example, and when we say this world, we normally put a sweep of the hands and to say this world, everything within the range of our sense experience and our internal interpretations, and we take for granted that there is solidity, that there's liquidity. We take for granted that we have relatives or a dwelling place to live in, and so on. All of these things, we don't even give a second thought. And we put a stamp on it. This is our reality. But the whole basis of our understanding in spiritual life is to see and to examine, as the ancient sages did, is that really what is real? The whole of both science and philosophy is to, certainly physics and philosophy, is to try to determine what is the nature of reality. And by that we mean what is the nature of being. That's called ontology in philosophy or metaphysics. And then how do we get to know this? This is called epistemology in philosophy. You don't have to know these terms, but you have to know why they're important. So the nature of being is being discussed here. The nature of reality is being discussed here. And then it tells us that knowledge is a little bit flaky, but it also tells us that there's one existence. For that we can be sure. And in these stories, the remarkable thing is, these stories are told with no explanation. In other words, they're told so that we can ruminate on them and then see what is the lesson from it, what is the meaning for us, and how is it practically applicable in our daily life. So it's worth examining this life of ours and how this story is a symbol of the principle of Maya. Markandeya, of course, is a remarkable sage. He's a sage who seems to be enduring for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And he is describing, or he is witnessing, most unusual and irrational experience. He is operating as he normally operates, but he doesn't know the cosmic background of it. Now, we have a principle in thermodynamics. It is called entropy, the law of entropy. To put it simply, you can imagine if you have a china cup and you handle it a little carelessly and it falls to the floor and is fragmented into pieces, you are not expected to reverse itself and reassemble. There is a one-directional aspect to events in time. It only goes in one direction. We can't reverse it. It was discovered during the Industrial Revolution, of course, that things become, when things are hot, they become cooler. And not the other way around. Things which are cold do not become hot. It requires some energy to put it in. And when you put the energy in, then, of course, molecules can dance a little bit more freely. And when that happens, they bang into each other. And when they bang into each other, they create some friction and some radiational heat. It seems that the ancient sages knew this thoroughly and applied it to the whole universe, the whole cosmos. And so what we call the evolution of the universe, no matter how we understand it, will eventually come back again. It will go into reverse at some point. And when it goes into reverse, what will be the consequence of it? But to make it go forward, to make it go backward, and in between, three aspects of force have to be delivered to it. First of all, a force of creation or protection has to be there, birth, and then something that keeps it going as an interim period between the time that it all reverses and dissolves. And you might say, but I thought in entropy you cannot reverse it. It goes into a more chaotic condition. Well, it reverses in the sense that it dissolves. It goes into chaos, in other words. So exactly following the laws of entropy. But then it goes into quiescence. It goes into a kind of sleep. It is a cycle, has to complete itself. And when it is finished, it is called one day of Brahma. One day of Brahma has elapsed. One day of the creative force has elapsed. One day of the cosmic mind is over. And then the Supreme Being, which is here, of course, is put in Vaishnavite terms as Vishnu, but it means the all-pervading one. We have to get away from the sectarian understanding of these things and understand it's an all-pervading thing. And this Supreme Being from whom the world first emanated in purity and order now feels a growing within itself the urge to draw the outworn cosmos back into his divine substance. Now I'm taking as my inspiration for this and my imagination from this wonderful book, which is called Myths and Symbols in Indian Art and Civilization. It's edited by Joseph Campbell, but comes from the scholar Heinrich Zimmer. And I use it because it so wonderfully and beautifully describes this wonderful drama. So we have a creator, we have a sustainer or maintainer of the universe, but it comes to the point of manifesting also the destructive aspect, which we characterize, of course, as Shiva. And he will devour this sterile chaos and dissolve all animate things, all animate beings. From Brahma on high, inner ruler and cosmic life spirit, of the universal body down to and what is considered to be a clump of glass or a leaf, a small, tiniest organic object, just a symbol of the smallest organic object we can think of. Even an ant is a higher manifestation. And when we try to reconstruct how we got organic life, we can't really do it. There's no laboratory experiment that has proved to be successful so far. But certainly it would have to be something to do with the carbon content, something to do with the oxygen content in the early formation of our Earth, something to do with the fact that there is water abundantly present at some point, and the fact that there is a response to the sun and the water and all of these other elements from simple sea foliage, if you will. Fungi is important in the process. This slimy mold is important in the process, and so on. And so, but our world has nothing to do with this. Our world is a world of hills and rivers and mountains. It's a world of oceans. And it's also, speculatively, a world of other beings that we don't really know of, but we've heard of, such as other deities, goblins, spirits, angels, celestial beings. All of these and all of us people are to be resumed back by the Supreme. And so in this concept of the destruction, we now have a kind of cosmic cycle that is increasingly, at least conceptually, being adopted by cosmologists, rival cosmologists to the standard model, which wants to put everything in a linear way and doesn't know what happened before that. There's no before that. And so the difficulty is, if you have a cyclical approach, then you have a problem of accumulation, because everything that accumulates and evolves and then ends, and another cycle, all of that has to carry over and becomes impossible. Your mass balance is gone. You can't create more than what is there, because a fundamental law says that mass and energy can never be created, can never be destroyed. You can't add more and more and more to it. So there has to be a total destruction. There has to be a complete elimination of what was there in the beginning. And so the ancient people must have thought about that and must have come across this interesting and inspired idea, no doubt, that the whole of the existence gets absorbed back into its origin. The conception of destruction follows the law of nature as well, because we can witness, and it seems increasingly so with so-called global warming, climate change, and so on, that we can experience fierce heat, we can experience drought, alternating with torrential rains and floods. Right now in Ireland, we are experiencing some of those. And then we can magnify it, we can extrapolate that to such a degree that instead of sustaining, it demolishes existence itself. The warmth that normally ripens and the moisture that nourishes, and alternating in a cooperation of beneficence, is now annihilates. And we experience this ourselves. We experience this inward cosmology. We are living with a number of assumptions in our waking world of familiar things around us and endorsing it as a reality. And then you see, very often I have questions that come to me like this. Yeah, all this philosophy is fine and spirituality is fine, but what about the real world with real problems? Not understanding that these 2 points of view are incompatible. When you talk about real, it means real to you in one phase of your experience. That phase of your experience is this working, waking world which we live in. But as soon as we close the eyes, another world arises. And we think that this world that arises is unreal because we're evaluating from something we mistake as real. But the whole thing gets absorbed into one entity. Eventually, we call this deep sleep. And so Vishnu begins terrible last work by pouring infinite energy into the sun. And I'll describe it by reading the text here, because a beautiful description. He himself becomes the sun. With its fierce devouring rays, he draws into himself the eyesight of every animate being. The whole world dries up and withers. The earth splits, and through deep fissures, a deadly blaze of heat licks at the divine waters of the subterranean abyss. It's written so beautifully. These are caught up and swallowed. And when the life sap has entirely vanished from both the egg-shaped cosmic body, I have to explain that. According to the ancient cosmology, this world began, the cycle of this world began in a kind of spheroid. That is, it was a liquid thing, like a plasma, and that plasma started to rotate around an axis. And we know by studying the behavior of water, when a small drop of water is spun round, it develops into a spheroid. And so the spheroid is kind of called a cosmic egg, or it's egg-shaped, no doubt, or spheroid. And so both the egg-shaped cosmic body and all the bodies of its creatures, Vishnu becomes the wind, the cosmic life breath, and pulls out of all creatures the enlivening air. Like dissociated leaves, the sheer substance of the universe leaps to the cyclone. Friction ignites the whirling tumult of highly inflammable matter, and the god has turned into fire. And all goes up in a gigantic conflagration, then sinks into smoldering ash. And finally, in the form of a great cloud, Vishnu, the all-pervading one, sheds a torrential rain, sweet and pure as milk, to quench the conflagration of the world. The scorched and suffering body of the earth knows at last its ultimate relief, final extinction, nirvana. Under the flood of the god become rain, it is taken back into the primal ocean, from which it arose at a universal dawn. And this beginning chant that I read out really is illustrating this wonderful fact, this Nasadya Suktam, which tells us that if we try to think of this void, the only thing that is descriptive of it is when darkness, at a period when darkness, we can't even say of time, there was no time. When darkness covered darkness, what a beautiful description. You can imagine in the dead of night when there's no moon, obvious, and the clouds are covering, and you can't even see your hand in the dead of night. You add now darkness to it. It is this into which Markandeya stumbles. So, this intermediate thing, this water womb, if you like, receives again into itself the ashes of all creation, and the ultimate elements melt into the undifferentiated fluidity, which is really poetically called cosmic waters. And the symbol of cosmic waters, that is the all-pervading aspect, Vishnu, we might say, the cosmic waters, the cosmic ocean, this cosmic man. The whole thing is a cosmic man, also called Narayana. And the symbol of those waters will be Ananta, Ananta the serpent. So Vishnu, you can imagine like a spider that has climbed up the thread that once issued from its own organism. It draws it back into itself. That means there are no two. Therefore, when we talk about creation, it is a convenient term that we use, really, for projection from one thing from itself. There are no two things. Any discussion about is there a creator, is there creation, does not arise in this. The giant, the Lord of Maya, and the cosmic ocean on which he is recumbent, these are dual manifestations of a single essence. And this is what Markandeya finds out about in the end, not in the beginning. The ocean, as well as the human form, that is Vishnu, and the symbol of the water is the serpent, Naga. Vishnu is represented normally, of course, as reposing on the coils of a prestigious or a prodigious snake. And the favorite symbolic animal of Vishnu is like that. Ananta. Why Ananta? Because Ananta means endless. So that not only the gigantic anthropomorphic form of Vishnu is there, and the boundless elemental, but the reptile too is Vishnu. It's on a serpent ocean of his own immortal substance. And it's there that the cosmic man passes the universal night in sleep. Not our version of sleep. Our version of sleep lasts a small while. But this is almost like an eternity, where darkness covers darkness. So you see, inside this God is the whole cosmos, and this is where Markandeya is wandering. This holy person, Markandeya, is wandering inside the God, over the peaceful earth, just like an aimless pilgrim, regarding with pleasure the edifying sight of the ideal vision of the world. But now, of course, an accident occurs. He's of course visiting every aspect of Vishnu's body, the holy hermitages, gratified by the pious pursuits of sages and their pupils, visiting shrines, visiting holy places, passing his time in worship, making his heart glad by the piety of the people in the countries through which he is roaming. And then something remarkable happens, an accident. In the course of his aimless, unending walk, the sturdy old man Markandeya slips, and inadvertently he slips out through the mouth of the all-containing God Vishnu. Through his sleeping, with his lips a little parted, a little open, he slips out. Breathing, and Vishnu is breathing with a deep, sonorous, rhythmic sound in the immense silence of the night of Brahma. Because as you know, this decay, what we call this entropy, is happening in 4 periods of time, which we call a cycle. And on each cycle, there's a degeneration, until it becomes almost impossible. And then at that final destructive moment, it all goes back. So what does Markandeya find when he slips out of the lips of the Vishnu? The sleeping giant. He finds only the ocean, utterly dark, stretching far in the all-embracing starless night. What is his reaction? He's seized by despair. He fears for his life because this is unknown territory. And splashing about in the dark water, he becomes a little pensive, wonders naturally after the initial shock. And then his doubt arises, and this is the important thing. Is it a dream? Or am I under the spell of an illusion? This circumstance is utterly strange, It must be the product of my imagination. For, the world as I know it, he thinks, and as I've observed it, is in its harmonious course. It doesn't deserve such annihilation, total annihilation, as it seems now suddenly to have suffered. There's no sun, no moon, no wind. The mountains have all vanished. The earth has disappeared. And of course, he wonders, this is not the universe I know. This is not the reality that I know of. What manner of universe is this, he wonders, in which I discover myself? And then these searching reflections, which we must all go through, of this great Saint Markandeya, they're a kind of commentary on this idea of what we call Maya. Not exactly illusion, but a kind of contradiction in terms about what is real. So what is real? Reality is a function of the individual. It's a result of the specific virtues and limitations of individual consciousness. And so while the saint had been wandering about the interior of the cosmic giant, Vishnu's body, he had perceived a reality which had seemed to him congenial to his nature. He has regarded it as solid and substantial. Now let's step back a little bit and think, what is Vishnu? A child, of course, will think of Vishnu in an external way. We'll put a statue there or a doll there or make a temple around such an entity. But Vishnu is the entire universe, the entire cosmos. All of existence is Vishnu. And very often people with an ardent spirit but misunderstanding, will ask, when will I get a vision of the Supreme, of God, in whatever form that may be? And crying and searching it for desperately, not understanding whatever you look at is He. Whatever you hear is He. Whatever your feet touch is He. When you feel the wind against your face, it is He. When you hear the speech of another, whether it's kindly or otherwise, it is He. This whole phenomenon, and that's all we can call it, is He. And it was the great philosopher, Immanuel Kant, who identified two things, the phenomenal world and the numeral world, the noumenon. Only one thing he made a mistake about, the noumenon can never be understood. But only the phenomena is as a product of the internal workings of your thought. But the noumenon, what is not known, remains forever unknown. But we understand that's not true because Markandeya, in this story, has an experience, we can say out-of-body experience to make a little fun about it. But out of body is not out of your body, your personal individualized body, it's out of the cosmic body. And so this is a remarkable story and provokes our imagination to think. There is Vishnu, the whole of existence, and Markandeya happens to stumble outside and then starts wondering, what is the reality? What is the nature of reality? What is this thing called Maya? So he's evaluating things, as we all do, as something solid and in our view substantial. But nevertheless, it had been only a dream or vision within the mind of the sleeping God, Vishnu. And on the other side of things, during the night of nights, reality, night of nights, when everything, the whole of existence goes back, the reality of the primal substance of the God appears to the human consciousness, certainly of the saint Markandeya, as a bewildering mirage. And he ponders and comes to the conclusion, it's impossible, it cannot be real. Now, we have to understand what he takes then, and is there any more? Of course, we know that there's much more to the story. So, one thing we know about these stories, there's no exposition of what it means. We have to shuffle these ideas, the events of the mythology, and understand what is the deep meaning for all of existence in mankind, but also for ourselves. Now, an immediate effect is assured. So when we read these various tales, now when he broods on this whole phenomena, he first of all becomes forlorn. That's the first thing, because your familiar world has vanished. So naturally a kind of bereavement occurs. And so the saint is forlorn in the vast expanse of the waters. And on the very point of despair, at last he becomes aware of the form of the sleeping God. He doesn't notice Vishnu in the beginning. And he's filled with amazement and beatific joy, because at least he sees something now. And in the midst of all the darkness that we witness, in the midst of all that confusion, because it's unfamiliar territory, in contrast to that, we see Vishnu. This is something to do with Maya, that in the midst of everything, it's not all flaky, it doesn't all come and go, it is all not that it is completely incomprehensible. We see, there is some sense to it because the all-pervading one is also there. And that gives us the opportunity to shift our thinking and to understand from the positive direction. That's his next thing that he does. So he's filled with amazement and beatific joy. And partly submerged in the waters, the enormous shape resembles something like a mountain range in his vision, his view, breaking out of the waters. And it glows. It glows with a wonderful light that's coming from within. And so the saint swims nearer, don't forget he's in cosmic waters, to study the presence. And he had just opened his lips to ask, "Who are you?" when the giant seizes him summarily and swallows him. And once more, he regains his understanding of his familiar world with its landscapes and its interiors. And so abruptly, Markandeya is restored harmoniously to the world of Vishnu's dream. And Markandeya is filled with extreme confusion because he could only think of his brief yet unforgettable experience as a kind of vision. And when something happens so quickly like this, you rub your eyes and wonder, is this real? And paradoxically, he himself, the human being, is unable to accept any reality that transcended his interpretation of his limited consciousness of the familiar worlds, that was now contained within the divine being as a figure of its universal dream. But Markandeya, who had suddenly been blessed with a vision of the supreme existence itself, in and by itself, in its all-containing solitude and quietude, that particular revelation, in this way, in the same way, had been also but a dream. So Markandeya resumes his former life, just as before, but of course there's a transformation because of experience. But he wanders over the wide earth as a saintly pilgrim, as he used to do. He observes his spiritual practices, and he observes those who are practicing, yogis practicing their austerities in the forests, in the woods, and nods his assent to kingly donors who perform costly sacrifices with lavish gifts for the Brahmins. All of this he is observing. And he watches all those Brahmins officiating at sacrificial rituals receiving generous fees for their effective magic, ironically enough. And all the castes he saw piously devoted to their proper tasks and the holy sequence of the 4 stages of life. 4 stages of life, that is the life of these are 4 ashrams, the life of a student, that is a brahmachari, which is a discipleship under spiritual guidance and adopting religious study and learning rituals and so on and so forth, essentially learning good citizenship, and then entering into household life, head of a family as the stage of grihastha, manhood, married life, begetting children, and so on, and focusing on the aim of artha, wealth. And then, of course, going as a hermit in vanaprastha into the forest where he lives a monastic life of a teacher, along with his renunciation with his family still, or with his certain fixed dwelling place, and then finally into the homeless state of the mendicant. All of these are the parts of the 4 stages as they're observed, 4 ashrams of life. 3 of them dedicated to dharma, artha, kama, and then ultimately moksha. So, as he's doing this, he wanders in safety for, let's say, another 100 years. But then, inadvertently, this man is very clumsy. Once again, he slips from the sleeper's mouth and tumbles into the pitch black sea. But this time, on this occasion, in the dreadful darkness and water desert of silence, he beholds a luminous babe, a godlike boy beneath the fig tree, peaceful in his sleep. And then again, by an effect of Maya, Markandeya sees the little lonely boy cheerfully at play, undismayed amidst the vast ocean, splashing about. And Markandeya, this great saint, was filled with curiosity, but his eyes couldn't stand the dazzling splendor of the child. And because that's also an unfamiliar scene. And so he remains at a comfortable, safe distance and ponders as he keeps himself afloat on the pitchy deep. And Markandeya reflects on this. He uses something like this. Something of this kind I seem to remember having beheld once before, long, long ago. But then in his mind, he becomes aware of the fathomless depth of the shoreless ocean and was overcome with freezing fear. This is happening to me again. And the deity in the guise of the divine child, that is namely the same essence, the same Vishnu, he doesn't know it yet, gently addresses him, "Welcome, Markandeya." And the voice had a very soft, deep tone of the melodious thundering of an auspicious rain cloud. You'll see I'm going into much more detail than last week. And so the deity reassures him, "Well, welcome, Markandeya. Don't be afraid, my child. Don't fear. Come hither." And the hoary, ageless saint, he couldn't recall, I should say, a time when anyone has presumed either to address him as a child, "This has become my child," or to name him simply by his first name without any disrespectful appellation referring to his saintliness and his birth. So he became profoundly offended. And though weary, pained with fatigue, and at a very great disadvantage, he burst into a display of temper, as we all could do, regardless of our saintliness. Stimulated like this, and what is the cause of it? Well, twofold. His ego, on the one side, that when poked will create a tremendous overreaction, that's on the one side. But on the other side, it is this illusion, if you will, this great unfamiliar territory that he's in, and that we can largely call ignorance. And so, though weary, pained, and fatigued, and at a very great disadvantage, he loses his temper and he says, "Who's presuming to ignore my dignity, my saintly character," see how many Mayas there are, "and make light of the treasure of magic power stored in me through my ascetic austerities? I have siddhis. Who is this who slights my venerable age, equal to 1,000 years, as the gods count years? I'm not accustomed to this sort of insulting treatment. And even the highest deities regard me with exceptional respect. Not even Brahma would dare to approach me in this irreverent manner. Brahma himself addresses me courteously in words like, 'O long-lived one.' And he calls me. That's what he calls me. And so who's now courting disaster by flinging himself blindly into the abyss of destruction and casting away his very life by naming simply Markandeya? Who's going to merit deaths like this?" Anyway, when the saint Markandeya had expressed his anger, the divine child resumed speaking unperturbed. "Child, this is the child itself speaking. I'm your parent, your father, your elder. I'm the primeval being who bestows all life. Why don't you come to me? I know you very well. And I know that you practiced severe austerities in bygone days and times in order to beget a son. And he gained my grace, and he was pleased with his perfect saintliness. And I gave him a gift, and he requested that you, his son, should be endowed with inexhaustible life strength and should never grow old." I'm talking about your father. Your father knew the secret core of his existence. And you stem from that core, and only through my grace were you born. So that is why you're now privileged to behold me, lying on the primal, all-containing cosmic waters and playing here as a child beneath the tree. What is the tree? The tree is the cosmic tree that we generally call life for existence. Anyway, at this, Markandeya's features brighten with delight, and his eyes grow wide and like opening blossoms. And in humble surrender, he bows and he prays, "Let me know the secret of your Maya, the secret of your apparition, now as a child, lying and playing in the infinite sea. Lord of the universe, by what name are you known? I believe you to be the great being of all beings, for who else could exist as you exist?" And Vishnu then replies, "I am the primeval cosmic man." What is the whole universe? It's resolved into the primeval cosmic man, and well, what we see is the cosmic expression of it. I'm Narayana, the cosmic man. He is the waters, he is the first being, he's the source of the universe. I have 1,000 heads, I manifest myself as the holiest of holy beings. At this time of more or less Durga Puja anyway, I often ask people, if given the chance, how many arms does Mother Durga have? And then people look at the image and they count, and some say 8, and of course there are varieties of this. And it's a trick question. And those who know me know it's a trick question, because I say, well, at least 16 billion arms. Because most of the humankind have arms, so on average, most are bestowed with arms, because what you're looking at, the whole of humanity, and I'm saying as a minimum, at least, because it's not taking into account all the other arms, including the arms of the galaxies. So I manifest, she says, myself as the holiest of holy offerings. I manifest myself as the sacred fire that carries the offerings of men on earth to the gods in heaven, and simultaneously I manifest myself as the Lord of waters, wearing the garb of Indra, the king of gods. I am the foremost of the immortals. I am the cycle of the year, which generates everything and again dissolves it. I am the divine yogi, the cosmic juggler. Now this is all echoing verses in the Bhagavad Gita, which says, not I'm in, but I am. So I am the cosmic juggler or magician. You can imagine a stone wall and you don't know what's behind it, but you know some force is activating 3 balls being thrown up into the air, one after the other in sequence. Let us say yellow, green, blue, yellow, green, blue, yellow, green, blue. And these states we're watching and we're seeing there's an unseen juggler that is doing this. This is Maya. And what we're witnessing in 3 phases of consciousness, waking, dream, dreamless sleep, waking, dream, dreamless sleep, it is all as a result of this cosmic juggler who works wonderful tricks of delusion. The magical deceptions of the cosmic yogi are the yugas, the ages of the world. And this display of the mirage of the phenomenal process of the universe is the work of my creative aspect, that is called Brahma, but at the same time I am the whirlpool, the destructive vortex that we call Shiva. That's not contained in the text I'm adding, that sucks back whatever has been displayed and puts an end to the procession of these ages. I put an end to everything that exists. My name is Death of the Universe. You know, the art of living is a popular topic. And what is spirituality really? Not only the art of living, but the art of dying also. So from the self-revelation of Vishnu, it appears that Markandeya was just far more privileged than Narada, and this I mentioned last week. And you see, when Markandeya slips from the god's mouth, from Vishnu's mouth, he fell out of existence. Insofar as existence is understandable and bearable from his point of view. And he finds himself confronted by what amounts to the great nothingness. If it's not familiar to you, then it's a great nothingness. The vast desert, say, of the shoreless sea. And the world familiar to him, of course, has vanished when that happened. And then in sudden succession, he's experienced 2 contradictory, incompatible aspects of the one essence. And his human mind doesn't understand, just as our mind doesn't understand, the coordinate of the 2 things. And Vishnu teaches him the identity of opposites. What is Maya? It's the identity of opposites, the fundamental unity of everything in one supreme being. And stemming from his whole soul, his only substance, thriving and perishing in God, all melts away again into the only source. And what other teaching can we get? The identity of opposites, first by manifesting himself as a baby, unafraid, though utterly solitary in the infinite expanse of the abysmal waters and the starless night, again by addressing the age-old saint as child. All of this is confusing. And by calling him by his first name as an old friend or relative, though apparently the 2 have never met. So the secret of Maya in all of this is this identity of opposites. Maya is simultaneously and successive manifestation of energies that are at variance with each other, processes contradicting, annihilating in each other, creation and destruction, evolution and dissolution, the dream ideal of the inward vision of the God and the desolate nothingness, the terror of the void, the dread infinite. It is for this reason that Sister Nudita understands, and that Swami Vivekananda also understood, and that Ramakrishna also understood. The image for today of what is a deity, what is a supreme principle, what religion calls God, would have to include all of these contradictory elements. Then we can have as many different arguments as we like about how can a just God create this or that. There's a complete misunderstanding. What is this supreme being? And we have left out some of the things we just don't like. Some of the things we deem to be incompatible. And so Kali, for example, is that mother nature, if we will, that completely covers totally all these apparent contradictions. Beneficent in her face, destructive in the things that she wears, skulls and arms, the severed arms and so on. Glorious in her appearance, and yet naked, raw, as nature itself is. Dark and black, because this is the cosmic waters, the darkness of potential existence itself. This is Maya, and yet the inference comes from Shiva, the dancing Kali, or the static Kali, even that aspect, standing on the body of Shiva, representing not only the potential, the inert potential, the inactive principle, as it were, and yet arising from this principle. All of this is worthy of meditation. So Maya is the whole cycle of the year, generating everything and taking it away. This and uniting incompatibles expresses the fundamental character of the highest being, who can be considered as the Lord and wielder of Maya, whose energy is Maya. Opposites are fundamentally of the one essence, two aspects of the one that is pervading everywhere. And then the deep booming voice of the child continues, and instruction rolls from his lips in a wonderful soul-gratifying stream. See, I am the holy order, that is, I am Dharma. I am the growing fervor of the ascetic endeavor, that means I am tapas. I am all those appearances and virtues through which the true essence of existence manifests itself. I am the Lord, creator and generator of all beings, that is, I am Prajapati, the order of the sacrificial ritual, and I am called the Lord of sacred wisdom and celestial light and so on. I manifest myself as wind and earth, as the water of the oceans, all of these things. And then eventually, that's not the end of the story, because with a swift motion, the primeval being brings the holy Markandeya to his mouth and swallows him. So he vanishes again into the gigantic body. But this time, the heart of the saint is so flooded with beatitude that instead of wandering further, he seeks rest in a solitary place. This part of the story we didn't tell. The song of the immortal Ganda, that is the immortal swan, if you will, that at first is hardly audible because it's a secret, yet universal melody of God's life breath flowing in and out. This is the song that Markandeya hears. He hears it like this. Many forms do I assume, and when the sun and moon have disappeared, I float and swim with slow movements on the boundless expanse of the waters. So I am the swan, I am the Lord, I bring forth the universe from my essence, and I abide in the cycle of time that dissolves it. Now the melody and the song, with its figure of the cosmic swan, is the last of the series of archetypal revelations of this supreme principle that is made and presented to Markandeya. In this mythology, the wild swan is always associated generally with Brahma, you see, mythologically represented as being on the back of a swan. So, also, just as Indra also rides on an elephant, Shiva on the bull, Shiva's son, the warlike, the war god Skanda, rides on a peacock. This is his vehicle. And the Devi sits on the lion. So Brahma soars through the atmosphere on a magnificent swan. These vehicles are mounts, these vahanas. These are manifestations on the animal plane of the divine individuals themselves. They hold the character or characteristics of whoever rides on the top of them. And so, actually, the swan is the mask of the creative principle, the anthropomorphically embodied in Brahma. And as such, it's a symbol of sovereign freedom through stainless spirituality. That's why the Hindu ascetic, let us say the wandering monk or saint, is supposed to have become freed from the bondage of rebirth, is said to have attained to the rank of Hamsa, or highest swan, Paramahansa. These are epithets commonly applied to the orthodox teacher saints of present-day Hinduism. We talk about Ramakrishna Paramahansa, because these are important symbols. And while listening to the song, Markandeya is listening to the breathing of the highest being. How beautifully wonderful this is, because it's a macrocosmic swan, the divine self in the body of the universe, manifesting through the song and exercising in pranayama, listening to the ingoing and outgoing of the breath. The inhalation is said to make the sound hum, and the exhalation sa. And so by constantly humming its own nature, hamsa, the inner presence is revealing itself to the yogi initiate. The song of this inner swan has a final secret, one more secret to disclose. Hamsa, Hamsa, it sings, but at the same time, it's saying, Soham, Soham. That Sa means this, Ham means I. And so the lesson is like this. The lesson is in this unity. This I am, this I am. And so we can leave it there. And having explored some of the more profound, deeper aspects of this wonderful, wonderful mythological story of Markandeya, that gives no explanation whatsoever in the texts and leaves that for us to explore the unusual aspect of this, stimulating our imagination into a state of irrationality, where we have to try to make sense of something that we find absolutely remarkable and not in tune with our daily experience. I hope you enjoyed that. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Swami.
you. Thank you, Swami.
Thank you so much.